The best part of soldering and fusing is there's like a range of temperature where the magic happens and something actually melts and it sticks something else together, or the pieces melt into each other. And every time I do it, it's like still like the first time. And I think, oh my gosh, this is alchemy. This is the best thing ever. Because you're right there in the moment and you can't not be, or you miss it, or you melt it totally. So you have to really be in the moment in order to do a lot. My name is Paulette Werger, and I'm an artist of varied mediums, but mostly a metalsmith. I work in sterling silver and gold, high carat golds, gemstones, platinum, and I also do drawing and painting and encaustic painting. And I also do a little bit of blacksmithing too. So I'm sort of metal-centric. My father was an auto mechanic. My grandfather on one side was a tool and die maker, on the other side was also a large engine mechanic. And my great-grandfather was a Hudson River School landscape painter. So basically, whenever I showed any type of acumen to anything artistic, I was reinforced. Oh, you're going to be like Grandpa Davidson. So I didn't have to go through a lot of the pushback from, oh, I want to be an artist when I grow up, because there was already one in the family that was successful. And I think successful through, he was born in 1865 and died in 1945, so he was flanked by 2 wars and a depression in the middle. He knew how to survive well, given the conditions he was in, and I think that also is part of my fabric in terms of who I am. Like, I don't need much, but I love doing what I do. So I studied art education at Skidmore College and the College of St. Rose. And then the summer between undergraduate and graduate school, I went to a school called Penland School of Craft. That was it. And it was like, wow, there's people here who have a career making what they want to make. And it was like, bing, the light went on. And it was like, okay, I'm going to go to school for metalsmithing. And, then I went to grad school. And when it comes to like mentors of mine, Fred Fenster, Eleanor Modi, and Truman Lowe, 3 people I worked with in grad school who each had a very different point of view. When I first met Fred, he had a pencil behind his ear and he was wearing coveralls. And I took one look at him. This is when I was interviewing to go to school in Wisconsin. And he was dressed like my dad at the gas station. And I took one look and I was like, oh, he's the guy. He's the guy I want to work with. With Eleanor, she is and has been always someone who presented herself in a way where she was both kind and gentle. Oh, so good. And Truman would be able to go into any room and find out everything about everybody, but he very rarely said a word. And so I feel like those, in terms of my personality that was influenced as a maker, those 3 distinct personalities have sort of been integrated into how I look at things in a big way. So I just sort of went clear through from kindergarten to grad school in one breath. And then I got out of it and I was like, oh wow, I just went through a lot of school and now I need to figure out what I'm supposed to do with life, because I've been in academia for a really long time. I decided that I knew about teaching and I knew about making, but I didn't know about surviving in terms of like, where's my paycheck going to come from? And I started applying for positions in jewelry stores so that I could learn the art of commercial jewelry making and diamond setting and engagement rings and wedding bands and the business end of things. So I did that for 8 years. And then at the end of that, I was like, we should try making a cooperative of metalsmiths and have a communal tool base that we can all generate a career out of, so that our overhead would be low and we could manage to do what we wanted to do artistically without it having an impact. Last year, I was at a show and a whole group, young, maybe 10-year-olds came by, and they were all tilting their heads like this and then picking things up and looking at things really closely. You could just see that they wanted to understand how something like this was made. And it was just one of the nicest experiences when you have somebody that has that level of curiosity and looks kind of with a sense of wonder at what you're making. I have this picture of me at 3 holding this daisy, and I'm looking not at not smelling the flower. I'm looking at it with this immense intensity, and I still feel like I'm doing the same thing. However many years later, I'm taking and referencing those things again and again and again in my work. And sometimes they end up more geometric, sometimes they end up very organic. Botanical drawing and botanical structure, I feel, are very closely connected to how things are constructed in metal. And it's from close inspection and actually physically taking a plant apart and then figuring out how to re-engineer that in metal and still have it not look like a direct representation of the plant, but a feeling or a gesture like you would get when you draw. So, for example, like a lot of my spoon handles will start out really thin up here and then really fat down here. And it's the same kind of transition of volume or form that you have in a line when you're looking at a branch in the spring or a blade of grass or a tulip coming up out of the earth. Most everything I do is solely based on the curiosity of a concept or an idea, how things work. For example, how do I make this plant or this object move and rotate 360 and be able to be worn by somebody I don't know? Then I start making samples that succeed and fail. Then I change scale. Then I change material. But my work is painfully simple visually, but in engineering it is not. Sometimes I have to have a conversation that's this long to get to something that's that simple. I'm always working directly with either sheet metal or wire, and oftentimes I'm casting an ingot. So I'm working with scraps that I melt and then I pour into a mold, and then it becomes passed through a machine to make certain gauge thicknesses of wire. Then those lines become forged or heated or fused or soldered to make an image that then becomes a piece of jewelry. I'm trying to distill down an idea to its elemental parts. The one sentence, the line of poetry, whatever it is, the visual thing that you can take in with your eye, think you know what you're looking at, and then you look at it a second time and you realize, oh my heavens, that it moves, it pivots, it does this, it does that. And for me as a jeweler, the human anatomy, how a person moves and what the relationship is from shoulder to clavicle to earlobe, these proportions on a person, every person is different. So I have to figure out intuitively whether or not that's going to work and how to make it work so that when the piece is not on me, it will function on someone else. So that's the part of craft and the puzzle of engineering that I really like the best. Community, when you become an artist, is like, for me, it's been a lifeblood. Metalworks is a jewelry school in Waltham, and I teach there quite regularly, and they're the ones that have been the sponsor for educating on Zoom. So it's because of I'm in the middle, and then there's all these intersecting circles of all these places that are nonprofits that I exist within. It gives me the opportunity to reach out in any direction whenever I need to move forward or when someone has a question about me or what I'm doing. It's not something you can plan. It has to do with sincere relationships that you have that grow into friendships, figuring out who your people are, seeking out people who are mentors to you through organizations like Society of North American Goldsmiths, League of New Hampshire Craftsmen, and Society of Arts and Crafts. How does the next generation of people behind me come past me? I wouldn't exist if I didn't have somebody that I could educate, tell the story, and sell a product to. So it's this understanding the community that I exist in and welcoming people that don't understand what that community is and seeing them really become engaged. I mean, I think that's the pivot point for a lot. Who will have taken the information that I have shared and pushed it to the next generation or the next level? I think that's when I get really excited, is when I see somebody that I've shared something with through a class or through mentoring, and all of a sudden I see them 5 years later, and boom, they've blossomed into clearly their own voice, their own business, whatever it is they're doing. That's a huge gift, and we have to keep doing it. That's one of the questions I often get asked. How do I separate myself from the people I've learned from? And I think it's just through hard work. And rather than success, I think making mistakes are probably the most important thing. There's times when I think I'm just utterly failing, and then the next day I'll come back and think, what if I turn that upside down? Or, give yourself the permission to look at things differently.